Good morning, dear participants, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Najad Lindsay, and I'd like to thank you for taking part in today's event entitled Catalyzing Sustainable Growth Through Evaluative Evidence, Lessons from Sierra Leone and Liberia. So before we start, I'd like to recall a few housekeeping rules. The first one is for the panelists. Please remember to mute your microphones when you're not talking. For all participants for interpretation, please note that there is a little globe icon at the bottom of your screen, so you can click on it if you wish to have the session in English or in French. During the Q&A session, please remember to raise your hand. And throughout the session, you can ask your questions in the Q&A chat, and some of them will be picked later so that we can respond to them. I will now introduce our moderator for today's session, Mr. Prosper Charles. Mr. Prosper Charles is a country economist for Sierra Leone at the African Development Bank. And he has been an economist, he's an economist, with over 23 years of experience. He previously worked with the World Bank, Tanzania office, the Economic and Social Research Foundation, and the International Development Center of Japan. So, Mr. Prosper Charles, you have the floor. Thank you, and I wish you all a great session.
Thank you, Nadia. I would like to welcome everyone to this session. The purpose of this session, as you all know, is to bring together insights from the respective evaluations by our institutions and reflect the perspectives of the Multilateral Development Bank and the UN agency institution in supporting sustainable development in countries that are in fragile situations such as Sierra Leone and Liberia. And we understand that the evaluations that were carried differ in scope slightly and approach. We know the African Development Bank's evaluation was carried for program and strategy covering 10 years, and the UNICEF's evaluations were carried for a period covering 2020 to 2024, which is 5 years. So there is slight difference in scope, but we know there are similarities in the model of evaluation, meaning they all cover the relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, sustainability of the program. So this session will enrich us in terms of the learning that these institutions can draw to inform the design of the programs, to respond to situations in complex and changing environments, as we know in fragile cases in countries like Sierra Leone and Liberia. So without wasting time, I would like to welcome the first items of the event, which is opening remarks from the two institutions. And in this case, I would like to welcome Mr. Madu, who is representing the Evaluator General of the African Development Bank, to make the opening remarks. Please, Mr. Madu, welcome.
Thank you very much, Prosper. Mr. Gilles Faninu, Regional Director for UNICEF Wakaro. Mr. Prosper Charlie, African Development Bank's country economist for Sierra Leone. Dear panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participants joining us from around the world. It's a great honor and privilege to speak at this important session of the gLOCAL Evaluation Week 2025. On behalf of the African Development Bank's Independent Development Evaluation, IDEV, I extend my sincere thanks to UNICEF's West and Central Africa Region Office for their excellent collaboration in organizing this session and for their unwavering support to strengthening evaluation capacity in our region. I also wish to thank our moderator, Prosper Charlie, and the evaluation community present here today, from partner governments, civil society, to multilateral development banks, United Nations agencies, and bilateral partners. Your presence is a clear reflection of our shared commitment to evidence-based development action. Today's session, focusing on catalyzing sustainable growth through evaluative evidence, addresses a challenge that is timely and deeply consequential. At a time when the world continues to face interlocking crises, from public health emergencies and economic uncertainty to climate shocks and conflicts, the importance of evaluation as a learning and accountability tool has never been greater. In fragile and transition contexts such as Sierra Leone and Liberia, evaluations are more than just mechanisms for reflection. They are essential for adaptation, learning, and strategic course correction. They help us answer not just the question, did we deliver? But more importantly, are we on the right path to transformative, inclusive, and sustainable development? At IDEV, we recently completed 2 comprehensive evaluations of the bank's country strategy and program for Sierra Leone and Liberia, covering the period from 2013 to 2023. These evaluations assessed the bank's strategic positioning, development effectiveness, and responsiveness to evolving country needs. The findings highlighted not only the impact of external shocks such as Ebola and COVID-19, but also the critical importance of institutional capacity, financial sustainability, and implementation agility. Similarly, our colleagues at UNICEF Wakaro have conducted robust country program evaluations in both these countries, generating valuable lessons on how to build resilience in systems, empower communities, and advance gender equity. Their focus on systems strengthening rather than just service delivery aligns closely with the bank's goal of achieving sustainable impact at scale. These evaluations show us how evidence can be used to inform government policy, enhance accountability, and drive inclusive growth. Importantly, they highlight a core tenet that evaluation context matters. Evaluations must be sensitive to local realities and adapted to complex, often fragile environments. We must go beyond standard metrics and indicators to truly understand the lived experiences of the people we serve. Ladies and gentlemen, let me also emphasize here the vital importance of partnerships. The impact of evaluation is significantly amplified when it is co-created, when we engage governments, civil society, youth, the private sector, and development partners from the very beginning. Evaluation should never be a solitary exercise. It is by nature a collaborative endeavor grounded in trust, open dialogue, and a commitment to shared objectives. Looking ahead, our challenge is to continue building a culture of one that not only demands accountability, but also fosters learning, innovation, and adaptive leadership. At the African Development Bank, we are committed to this path. Through IDEV, we are investing in stronger methodologies, greater transparency, and more systematic use of evidence in strategy design and implementation. Let me close by returning to the theme of this year's gLOCAL Evaluation Week, that is evaluation for a better future, environmental sustainability, inclusion, and peace. These are not abstract ideals, these are imperatives. And evaluation has a critical role to play in achieving them. It can help us understand the trade-offs, confront the hard truths, and shape strategies that truly leave no one behind. Thank you once again to our partners at UNICEF Wakaro, to all the contributors to today's discussion, and to each of you in the audience for your dedication to learning and progress. I look forward to the rich discussion ahead and to continuing our collective journey toward more impactful, evidence-informed development. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Madu, for very concise remarks. I would now like to welcome Gile Faninho, the Regional Director for UNICEF in Central Africa, to give us opening remarks. Please, Gile, you're welcome to deliver opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you very well.
Thank you. Honorable Mr. Tamba, Deputy Minister for Technical Services, Ministry of Public Works in the Republic of Liberia, Dr. Edwin, Director General of the National Monitoring and Evaluation Agency in the Republic of Sierra Leone, Mr. Mapuza Cyril, Evaluator General ad interim for the Independent Development Evaluation Unit at the African Development Bank. Dear panelists, warm greeting to all of you joining us today. It is a privilege to welcome you to this very important panel discussion as part of the gLOCAL Evaluation Week. I would like to say thanks to our partners at the Independent Development Evaluation Units at the African Development Bank for co-organizing this session and for their continued commitment to advancing the use of evaluative evidence in support of sustainable development across our continent, Africa. Today's panel is a crucial session. It is a reflection of how evaluation can drive real change in fragile context. It is about what we've learned. It is about what we can do better. And we know Sierra Leone and Liberia share a history marked by resilience in the face of crisis, whether from public health emergency like Ebola or COVID-19, economic shocks, or systemic fragilities. Through our evaluations, we have seen how this country have navigated complexities and how adaptive, community-driven, and equity-focused approaches can make a tremendous difference. Furthermore, our evaluations have shown that sustainable community-based approaches are key to achieving lasting impact. By promoting local ownership, they have not only strengthened resilience, but also paved the way for scalable solutions. And now, more than ever, we must prioritize expanding community engagement and system strengthening. These efforts are essential to accelerate results for children and to build more resilient, responsive systems that serve the entire community. These evaluations help us identify what works, what does not work, and what must be changed. They have been catalysts for collaboration with governments and communities, fostering inclusive but also responsive systems. Today's session is particularly important thanks to our partnership with the Independent Development Evaluation Unit at the African Development Bank. The evaluations of country strategy papers in Sierra Leone and in Liberia echo many of our findings. They highlight systemic changes such as capacity gaps, financial sustainability issues, and then external shocks that we also have faced in our programming. Yet, both IDEV and UNICEF evidence coverage on a critical insights. Human capital is the key to resilience and development. It is about investing in people, in children, in youth, and in communities to create systems that can face and that can resist to shocks and build futures. By working together across institutions, sectors, and communities, we can leverage evaluation not just as a reflection or academic exercise, but as a strategy to achieve transformative results. I want to take a moment to say thanks to you, and I look forward to the rich and inspiring dialogue ahead. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gile, for very informative remarks. I would like now to take this opportunity to welcome Sevara Hamza Ever from UNICEF. Sevara is multi-country evaluation specialist in West and Central Africa Regional Office of the UNICEF. She leads evaluation and evidence functions of the institution in Nepal, Afghanistan, and has managed evaluations in Eastern and Southern Africa. She has worked with the UNAU peacekeeping mission in Darfur on community stabilization projects. So she brings diverse experience in this area. Sevara, please share with us your presentation.
Bonjour, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. So as you heard, my name is Sevara Hamzaeva. I am a multi-country evaluation specialist at UNICEF West Central Africa Regional Office. I oversee the evaluation portfolios of Sierra Leone, Liberia, and the Gambia. It is a pleasure to welcome you all today on behalf of UNICEF. And today we would like to share our experience from our recent country program evaluations in Sierra Leone and Liberia. First, I'd like to give you a brief overview of our work in our region. We support 24 countries across the region where we implement a holistic development approach, integrating sectoral and cross-sectoral programming with a strong emphasis on equity, gender, and system strengthening. This means that we don't just focus on individual services, but we invest in human capital by working across health, education, WASH, child protection, social inclusion, and gender equality. And we collaborate with our partners on strengthening systems and promoting local ownership. Our integrated approach ensures that children and communities, even in fragile settings, have the opportunities and support that they need to thrive. Now, to the main focus of our discussion today, we'll shift the focus to key findings from our recent evaluations of our country programs in Liberia and Sierra Leone. Both of these country offices recently concluded their country programs. And the evaluation of the Sierra Leone country program was completed in 2024. And we have just finalized the evaluation of the Liberia country program this year. And before I even go to the findings, first I'd like to provide a brief overview of the importance of the country program evaluations, or CPEs as we briefly call them. So CPEs are essential for assessing UNICEF's institutional effectiveness, how well we implement our strategies, engage with our partners, and strengthen systems to deliver results for children and communities. And unlike other thematic evaluations, CPEs provide a comprehensive analysis of overall performance, and they offer insights into cross-sectoral integration, adaptive learning, and alignment with national priorities. Our CPEs typically rely on complex data collection methods to provide comprehensive picture of our performance. And in the evaluations of both Sierra Leone and Liberia, we adopted a mixed methods, theory-based approach. So this combined qualitative data, such as focus group discussions and key informant interviews, with quantitative data from household surveys. And grounded in theory of change frameworks, the evaluations integrated cross-sectoral lenses, including health, education, and other sectoral programs. And our sampling included a diverse range of participants from government officials and community members to UNICEF staff and development partners. Now, let's take a closer look at what these evaluations of our country programs have revealed. So the evaluations highlighted clearly both progress and challenges. There were notable gains in health, education, child protection, and WASH, supported by efforts to strengthen systems and partnerships. However, gaps persist, particularly in areas such as access to essential services, inclusion, and community engagement. Strengthening resilience, equity, and local ownership remains essential, especially to achieving sustainable results in fragile settings. And building on these findings, the evaluations also revealed broader system-level insights. For example, while integrated and cross-sectoral approaches show promise, there's also a need for greater coherence, scale, and monitoring to maximize impact. Evaluations also show that strengthening data systems and addressing persistent gaps in equity and inclusion, whether by gender, disability, or geography, are critical for ensuring that no one is left behind. And among the many important insights from both evaluations, one stands out. While strong political will and partnerships are driving progress, operational capacity, financing, and social norms are vital for achieving sustained impact. And having explored the key findings from our evaluations, it's clear that while progress has been made, challenges remain. So it is important to learn from our lessons learned, insights that can guide us in adapting strategies, strengthening systems, and driving meaningful, sustainable change for children. These evaluations have underscored the power of working with communities. When local voices lead initiatives, as we've seen in both Sierra Leone and Liberia, the results are more sustainable and meaningful. We also learned the importance of being adaptive, especially during times of crisis like COVID-19, the pandemic, where flexible programming was a key to continued progress. And equity must remain front and center, ensuring that girls, children with disabilities, and the most vulnerable are not left behind. And looking ahead, what we've learned is that sustainability will depend on embedding our efforts within national systems and providing tailored support to government partners in their capacity development efforts. Strong partnerships and collaboration, especially with the governments, are essential for creating policies that are grounded in evidence and responsive to local realities. These lessons remind us that true transformation happens when we work hand in hand with our partners and communities. And these lessons are not just for reflection, they're called to action, to adapt, integrate, and work together for sustainable and inclusive and impactful programming. As we shift gears, let's take a moment to reflect on the strategic value of country program evaluations. These evaluations are not just formal assessments. They're powerful catalysts for transformation as we're learning, and they inspired action, they promote continuous learning, and they help us drive change that truly matters for children, their families, and communities. And as we step into the next and final section of this presentation, I'd like to shift our focus to critical takeaways from both of these evaluations and how evaluative evidence can propel us toward impactful programming and policies. Our key takeaway is simple. Human capital development is foundational for sustainable futures. Investments in sectors like health, education, WASH, protection, and social systems build resilience and empower communities, especially in fragile contexts. So the message here is that human capital is not optional, it is essential. It enables future generations not just to survive, but to thrive and transform changes into opportunities. And when it comes to evidence, the key takeaway here is that evidence and evaluation fuel adaptive learning and impact. By generating rigorous, actionable insights, evaluations help us refine strategies and improve programs. And through adaptive programming informed by real-time evidence, UNICEF and our partners can effectively respond to evolving needs and shocks, especially in fragile context. Cross-sectoral integration emerges as a critical enabler for greater impact. Importantly, investing in systemic integration and coherence helps us scale these impacts for broader and lasting results. Community engagement and local capacity building are fundamental to sustainability. As we see, and there's a strong evidence, community-led initiatives have demonstrated that local ownership is the key to long-term impact. Moreover, by empowering youth and strengthening local capacities, we foster social cohesion and accountability, ensuring resilience well beyond the duration of any project. So this last slide brings us to the path forward, focusing on learning, collaboration, and commitment. The evaluations make it clear, while we've seen progress, transformative change requires continuous learning and adaptation. Collaboration across a broad range of stakeholders helps us strengthen systems and human capital. But for lasting impact, we need a sustained investment and political commitment supported by evidence-based planning and resources. So in fragile context, adaptive programming is crucial to ensure continuity of essential services and drive progress. And finally, strengthening government capacity and building strong partnerships lay the foundation for sustainable and inclusive systems that truly serve all. So this is it from my end. Thank you so much for your attention, and especially for your dedication and your commitment to advancing the rights and well-being of children everywhere. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sevara, for that very rich presentation. And now would like to complement that presentation with brief discussion from two evaluators from the African Development Bank. We have around the table May Esther Mwaka, a Principal Evaluation Officer from the Independent Evaluation Department at the African Development Bank, with so many years, to more than 20 years experience in monitoring and evaluation. And we have Mr. Boubacar Lee, also a Principal Evaluation Officer at the Independent Evaluation Department of the African Development Bank, also with experience, quite diverse experience in this area of evaluation, but he brings a very unique skill in the area of private sector, infrastructure, and regional integration. So I'd like to start first with a brief question to May Mwaka. May, can you please just briefly outline the overall objectives and scope of the evaluation for Liberia and Sierra Leone? What were you hoping to achieve with these evaluations? Over to you, May Mwaka.
Okay, thank you, Prosper, and greetings to all our colleagues and participants on this webinar. I hope you can all hear me. So similarly to what was presented by Sevara, IDEV conducted country evaluations in Sierra Leone and Liberia, and the purpose was really to assess the African Development Bank's contribution to development results and the strategic engagement over the period 2013 to 2023. These were both country program and strategy evaluations that really served two purposes: accountability by assessing the relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, coherence, and sustainability of both the lending and non-lending interventions, but as well as it also served the purpose of learning. In both countries, the evaluations looked at across the different sectors that were the core pillars of the two strategies, looking at interventions in infrastructure, economic governance, agriculture, and private sector development, as well as cross-cutting issues of gender, youth, environment, climate change, and resilience and fragility, because both of these strategies were really addressed, designed to address the fragility drivers. Ultimately, these evaluations develop lessons as well as actionable recommendations that are aimed at informing the next round of 5-year country strategies for Liberia, which will start in 2026, and Sierra Leone, that will be starting this year. Thank you, Prosper.
Thank you very much, May. Babakar, Please tell us, both countries faced significant shocks from Ebola to COVID-19. How well did the bank's strategies respond to these realities, and what results stood out to you, particularly in terms of environmental sustainability and inclusion?
Oh, thank you, Prosper, and good morning, colleagues and participants. And thank you for your participation to this important conversation. Maybe answering this question, I'll look at three different aspects. First, the context in Liberia. The second is the design of the strategy. And the last one would be about the results. About the context of Liberia, it's important to note that the fragility that characterizes the country has negatively affected the overall achievement of results. As a result, I think it's fair to say that despite the bank's efforts to achieve results in the most efficient and effective manner, the materialization of results will take time. And this is one of the most important lessons in these countries. Things are done on the medium and long term. As we found in the evaluation, 47% of outputs and 41% of outcomes are delayed, but we found that they are likely to be achieved in the short and medium term. With regard to the design, we found that the bank actually conducted major fragility assessments before each CSP. In 2011, there was the retrospective analysis and fragility assessment. And in 2019, there was the CRFA, the country resilience and fragility assessment that was created by the bank in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. Those fragility assessments generally identified key drivers of fragility, which in Liberia were economic exclusion, fragmented society, limited trust in the state, and continued security risk. And I think the bank built on that assessment to integrate the fragility lens into its interventions in Liberia. And you can find other important factors where the bank CSPs pursued complementary strategies and operation designed to address forms of state weakness, increase national integration, and foster inclusive economic growth. For instance, we also found that both CSPs emphasized that support in Liberia requires a medium to long-term approach with continued investment to consolidate the work done under the previous cycles. The bank also participated closely in policy dialogues, developing partnerships and advocacy around public health issues, for instance. And across the two successive CSPs, we found that the bank paid particular attention to horizontal inequalities, social exclusion, and gender inequalities as drivers of fragility. And about results, as these findings of the fragility assessment actually informed the bank's decision to upgrade and pave the Fishtown Harbour Road to address economic and social exclusion of this region of the country. This was implemented throughout the 2019-23 CSP. We found that 220 kilometers of roads on the 243 planned had been realized and open to circulation at the time of the evaluation. But it's important to note that those road construction projects were hampered by multiple internal and external constraints, including Ebola and COVID-19. And so I think it's premature to measure the impact of improved transport infrastructure on economic development and commercial activity at this stage. But what we've seen are positive signs in the right direction. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Boubacar. May, what would you like to add in terms of the bank's strategies in response to these realities that we are talking about, the shocks that these countries faced? Just briefly, I'll give you a minute or two to add to what Boubacar said.
Okay, thank you, Prosper. And I think, and really in response to the strategies, the bank demonstrated adaptability in its strategies. For example, in Sierra Leone, as they were coming from the iron ore price slump, this was compounded by Ebola, and very shortly after COVID, plus other natural disasters. We saw that during this time, the bank at the midterm of the first strategy of 2013 to 2017, refined this strategy to add a focus on agribusiness, private sector development, and SMEs to really respond and help the country respond to the deteriorating economic conditions, but also really to increase, the ability to diversify the economy. And this has now since become a standalone pillar in one of the strategies, really posturing private sector development as a key pathway for development in the country. Later, we'll discuss about how effective that was, but that was an important adjustment. And similarly, budget support provided through crises that, was equivalent to about 17.2% of the commitments, helped to stabilize, the economies. However, economic recovery remains, a challenge as due to the high debt distress situations, but also the overall global recession that has happened. But like Liberia, the banks contributed to increases in access to services, transport, energy, and wash. But we can't really tell the evaluation because it couldn't establish the impact on economic diversification, competitiveness. Right now, to the same reasons, it's on the one hand, it's too early to tell some of these impacts, but also the bank suffered from a fragmented approach to implementation of private sector development and weak measurement of some of the job impacts, really therefore affecting the ability to talk about the impact on economic transformation and competitiveness. But generally, with regards to inclusion, I think we learned that where there are targeted programs for women and youth, all these were fragility drivers. Where we've had targeted programs, there have been results that are evident. For example, one of the targeted youth employment and entrepreneurship program was really successful and exceeded its targets in linking training youth and linking them to private sector opportunities, building businesses. And the country has now developed a bigger youth and women job creation project to really leverage some of these lessons and results. And, and similar results for some of the focused gender projects. However, the challenge that we found was that when there is no intentionality around measurement for the differential impacts on some of these inclusion objectives, like impacts for women empowerment and youth, we are unable to tell the outcomes of the interventions because there is no data to support that. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, May. You actually went even further to answer my next question, which I really wanted you to delve into the key implementation challenges that the bank encountered and how did those affect the sustainability of the development outcomes. I believe you have outlined some in the response that you just gave. So I'd like you to be very brief on this one. I'll give you 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think in addition to those those challenges raised, one of the challenges was linked to the reduced funding for Sierra Leone. So this was the case for Sierra Leone, as the country exited from the list of the harmonized list of fragile countries and lost its eligibility for upfront funding under the Transition Support Facility. They evidenced a reduction in concessional funding available to implement its programs. This also came amidst a time of, the economic recession and high debt, and therefore challenges for the country to mobilize co-financing. So all these funding elements came together to affect the implementation of the program as envisaged, causing to delays in some of the programs in WASH. Some of the clean energy projects were not able to be implemented. And I will go again on the fragmented private sector development approach. So while private sector development was elevated, there were challenges in achieving this ambition. Firstly, because the private sector in Sierra Leone is informal, it's weak, and therefore really quite challenging to work there. But this was combined with our, not a well-coordinated and under-resourced approach from the bank side, therefore limiting the ability to meaningfully, impact on those directions. There are new programs starting up, but I think that was a challenge within that period. I will also talk about the capacity constraints from the government, which really led to delays. So the government's capacity to put in place project implementation units, the regular staff turnover, which erodes the capacity that's being developed, as well as weak procurement and contract management, all affected the ability to implement projects on time. And similarly, these same gaps, both institutional but also financial capacity, also do affect the sustainability for the programs going forward. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, May. Boubacar, you bring this unique experience around the table on issues of private sector, regional integration, and I'd like to hear from you about the implementation challenges that the bank encountered and how these challenges affected the sustainability of the outcomes of the operations in these two countries based on the evaluations that were conducted. Boubacar.
Thank you, Prosper. We need to look at the two different pillars, but for me, mainly in Liberia, implementation has been affected by the Ebola and COVID-19 shocks. The outbreaks of these pandemics have sent, for instance, in the transport sector that I mentioned before, have sent workers home and suspended construction to respect the quarantine protocols, for instance. We also find that in the bank support in the agricultural sector, where part of it was to develop rural transportation networks connected to these major roads, were also affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and delays in the bigger projects in the transportation sector. So you see the interrelations between projects and the impact of shocks on all those projects that accumulate. And in the energy sector, the main constraint to progress have been contractor interruption during the Ebola crisis and also COVID-19 pandemic, as well as limited professional and technical capacity on the government side. On the second pillar, I think again, it was the Ebola and COVID-19 pandemic. We found that the bank's efforts to improving the enabling environment for private sector development remains work in progress. Private sector operations have been slow to materialize due to the challenges business environment that May mentioned in Sierra Leone. It's the same challenges usually. And these were coupled with uncertainties arising during the COVID-19 pandemic as well. So thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Babokar. Very insightful. Now, I would like to give both of you 1 minute each. It's going to be very brief. And I'd like to hear from you, based on these evaluations from Sierra Leone and Liberia, what are the top two recommendations that would enhance the implementation and outcomes of future country strategies in these countries, particularly with regard to environmental sustainability and inclusion? So I'll give both of you 1 minute each, so it's going to be very brief. May you go first?
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the top two recommendations, so first, generally with regards to environmental sustainability and inclusion, is really the better, more systemic attention to the integration of gender, climate change, and environmental change activities right from the design stage through the planning and monitoring stage, as we found that it was stronger at the design, but became weaker during the course of implementation. So really to have all these kinds of interventions backed by more concrete assessments, as well as supported by relevant monitoring and evaluation mechanisms to be able to better capture the results. And then I think secondly, really a more continued attention to institutional strengthening of national capacities through both the project, but also through the country offices. Thank you.
Thank you, May. Babokar.
Okay, thank you, Prosper. I think we made 5 recommendations for the Liberia country CSP. And the two most, I think, important recommendations for me are to continue the bank's support to the transport, energy, and governance sectors to reinforce progress made toward reducing fragility and building resilience. And the second one is to maintain a strong coordination with other development partners to further enhance development effectiveness. The first one, because we are operating in a fragility context and challenges are multiple and interrelated, as we mentioned before, and a long-term approach with a particular focus on the consolidation of previous results is very important in this context. For the second one, operations in this context with very small country allocation compared to the level of challenges that you have in the country, I think it's very important that coordination with other development partners is efficient to enhance performance, particularly with regards to the relevance, the coherence, and effective development effectiveness. Thank you. Back to you, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Babakar. Now, after the presentation and very insightful discussions from the two evaluators from African Development Bank, I would like to now bring our panelists for a panel discussion. And today we are honored to have a very rich panel composed of decision makers. We have people with expertise in evaluation, and we have practitioners. So first of all, I'd like to recognize the presence of Honorable Joselia Tsapla, Deputy Minister for Rural Development, Minister of Public Works in Liberia. Honorable Tsapla is geotechnical engineer with 20 years experience in civil engineering. So you can imagine how much experience there is in there. She leads climate sensitive rural infrastructure development, and she also holds a master's degree in geotechnical engineering from Wuhan University of Technology. Welcome, Honorable Tsapla. And we have Dr. Soraya Hassan, a regional evaluation advisor from UNICEF in West and Central African Office. Dr. Hassan has diverse experience in results-based management evaluation and strategic planning and social policy across Africa. We also have Dr. James Edwin, Director and Chairman of the National Monitoring and Evaluation Agency in Sierra Leone. He has over 20 years of experience in results-oriented management. Dr. Edwin has served as head of monitoring and evaluation at the WTO's Enhanced Integrated Framework Principal Evaluator at African Development Bank, and is as a professor at the University of Alaska. So we have quite a rich panel before us, and I would like now to invite our panelists for discussion. I'll give the first, I'll give Honorable Joselia Tsapla the floor to share with us, based on your experience, how have evaluation findings influenced government policies and strategic decisions in Liberia, particularly in strengthening resilience and advancing rural development? Honorable Tsapla, floor is yours.
Thank you, Prosper. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here and be part of this panel discussion. First, my experience in rural development and with this evaluation for the Liberian Country Program from 2013 to 2023 it did more in assessing our past performance, but it has actually shaped our policy evolution. This year, we had an opportunity to present from last year to this year, we had an opportunity to work on the country strategy for this year, for the next 5 years, called the ARES Agenda for Inclusive Development. And I think the evaluation kind of like shaped it, because most of the things that were discussed in the findings, it brought the AID to a point that they had to take it from the counted approach to the national government. And it gave us a deep understanding to reflect on our commitment to inclusive, climate conscious, and sustainable development, and to ensure that the evaluation is put us in a place to move forward on our transformation. For example, the evaluation talk about monitoring and evaluation, and that's something the AID captured to a greater extent, that we will be doing continuous monitoring evaluation from the county development plans that were made. The process told us to go back and look at what the counties desired, because most of the projects that have been done over the years, the people did not have a say in it, so they couldn't really pinpoint to what they wanted. So you have a lot of white elephant projects that were done, school buildings that were constructed, hospital that was constructed that is not in use. So they wanted to get the people feedback on what are your key priorities, and I think that's something this evaluation looked at. The findings here has enabled the ministry to plan more strategically and understand that the transparent percent outcome of the capacity, weak institutional capacity, is something that as a ministry and agency or as deputy minister we want to do and to strengthen our own capacity, and the AID also look at that keenly. And quickly, there are several points that I think that this evaluation has brought onto light, and one of them is using an integrated approach for rural development. And that's something that I think one of the projects that we're working on now, we have brought all of those ideas together. For example, on the E5 project that my department oversees, the E5 project brought together is an agricultural project, but it also has several road components in maintaining feeder roads and ensuring that those projects work together. The second thing is to empower the local government, and I think that is key, because if you can't work with the local government institution, the local government agencies, then you as national government will not have the kind of influence and the kind of effect that you want your project to have. And that is something that I think we have transitioned to from the findings that we are transitioning to gradually with our community engagement and aspect, making community engagement a major part of all of our works that we do here at the Ministry of Public Works. So the government has done a lot, and we are still trying to do, but just tap here from my experience and just give an insight on why I think this findings has helped. You will see that as a government, we are trying to ensure that all of the projects we are doing now have the durability and the kind of climate resilience that we want for our infrastructure to have. So all our road maintenance, our construction projects that we are running now, we are ensuring that we have constant monitoring, evaluation, proper planning of the projects. We are aiming now, the ministry itself is trying to work on, because the component I look at is a lot of public-private engagement, and that in the last 10 years were not so prevalent in Liberia for the government. But now as an institution, we are trying to dive into that. I will stop here and then just for a while.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. And that's very informative to know that the evaluations have informed more integrated approach to rural development and also institutional and system strengthening for building resiliency. I would like now to invite Dr. Soraya Hassan. Dr. Hassan, please, given the rich findings we get from these evaluations and lessons from these evaluations in Sierra Leone and Liberia, how can we translate this evidence into adaptive programming and policy dialogue across the region?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Prosper, new panelists, all participants. It's also a pleasure for me to be with you virtually today and connecting from Dakar. Thank you very much for the very important questions. That is really important. So, of course, and UNICEF country program evaluation, and acknowledging from the beginning that our country program evaluation are one of the most strategic evaluation that UNICEF I would say, undertake in partnership with the different governments, in particular in this case, Liberia and the Sierra Leone. So these are very, very important. These are, placed under the overall cooperation framework. So, and to respond to your very important question, I will say that we see really three interconnected strategies where we can see to what extent we can translate this evaluative evidence into adaptive programming and policy dialogue across the region. And I was listening carefully to Honorable Tapla, and really I agree. We are having a similar interesting and important findings. For instance, the importance of institutionalizing first for adaptive programming based and building on the very important lesson learned that we are having from the country program evaluation, like we call it in short, the CPE. And that they are showing systematically the importance of really having responsive systems. And we need to adjust. We need, and for this to happen, it's important, to have and foster a culture of learning and adaptation. And this also it's possible, to really investing in strengthening the national systems, in particular in monitoring and evaluation. Promoting, what we can consider the mid-course correction, using different, moments of the, 5 years period of the country program documents, or as you call country strategy in the IFDB. For instance, in one of the most successful strategies that proven very, very important, during, emergency situation is the leverage of integrated programming. This has been also said by Honorable Tapa. This is very important, and the importance of deploying, for instance, as what we call the behavior change initiative, and working with the communities on the ground, strengthening and working closely with the local authorities. And what is also coming out of the CPEs is that importance also to have the adaptive programming is also investing in local capacities in a more strategic way, and taking into consideration the challenges, but also adapting ourselves as an organization like UNICEF in terms of process and procedures, and including in terms of resources and platform that we are using. The second most important, I would say, also insight coming from the evaluation that we can also helps us to use or translate this evidence is leveraging and strengthen partnership and local and community engagement. These are very, very important. The CPE findings are reminding us that if we want really to reach or to work towards sustained impact, we need to work collaboratively with others, and we need to really position and strengthen the local ownership and equity. It's about equity, and it's about involving all key stakeholders from the beginning, from the design phase throughout the implementation. We have a lot of example coming from the evaluation, not only the country program but other thematic evaluation. For instance, the community-led approaches, like for instance in the wash sector, water and sanitation, like for instance the community health worker in the health sector, and in order to speed up the rhythm of the immunization. This has been highlighted in the Sierra Leone and Liberia. So these are very important. And last, maybe also coming and linked to that is also the embedding evidence, into regional and also national priorities. The partnership, framework in which we are working with different countries is also the reference, is the reference that is also helping us to dialogue and also to utilize the whole process of the evaluation, to also promote the use of the findings, and to adjust the policies, to adjust the programming. And these lessons learned are very important. The cross-cutting approaches, the importance of that the CPE is also highlighting highlighting some of the local solutions that we need to promote, that we need to tap into. In a nutshell, these important insights are really also feeding into our overall UNICEF regional, but also organization-wide strategic plan. And for instance, for the upcoming, what we consider now accelerators are really will be very much positioned and prioritized. I mean by that the community, they're investing much more in the community on frontline systems. The importance, of supporting and much more local governance and maybe working together with different partners, the full engagement of partners. That's why our presence today is very much very important, and we are very happy to have this joint conversation, and also strengthening and enhancing accountability for the use of evidence, in particular evaluation. So maybe I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Soraya. Now, I'd like to turn to Dr. Edwin, James Edwin. Dr. Edwin, as the head of Sierra Leone's National Monitoring and Evaluation Agency, how is your institution using evaluation evidence to inform national planning and drive strategic decision-making, especially with regard to promoting sustainability, inclusion, and peace? From your experience, what do you think are the opportunities or challenges that exist in working together with partners like AfDB, UNICEF, the private sector, civil society, to promote a culture of evidence use for adaptive programming and policy making? Over to you, Dr. Edwin. You are muted. You are muted. Unmute your mic.
Thank you, Prosper. You getting me now?
Yes.
All right.
Loud and clear.
Apologize for the informal appearance. I am right now in the field. In fact, I am in the doctor's office just to get this done. To start with, NAMIA, National Monitoring and Evaluation Agency, actually is a new one. Sierra Leone had never got anything like that before as an umbrella agency. About 6 years, it was formed about 6 years ago. And it was formed by transiting from the from the Ministry of Development and Economic Planning to the President's office. And just last year, we became an agency. Besides that, we are running with what evaluation should be like. I'll focus on the evidence that we are using to advise government and the ministries and how that is implemented or integrated into the National Development Plan. When we started, for example, we did some assessment of the whole system. There was a discovery of inadequate capacity in the ministries, departments, and agencies. Although most of them had units in those ministries, departments, and agencies, M&E units, evaluation was never, the E part of M&E was never, ever done, except by donors. Most cases donor-driven. So we decided to inform government about this, and a decision was made to set a career pathway for monitoring and evaluation staff so that NAMIA itself can develop the capacity of the staff in the ministry, department, and agencies, and therefore establish a culture of monitoring and evaluation in those ministries. I am emphasizing monitoring and evaluation because monitoring had been done for several years, and it should be a belief that that data from monitoring has to feed into evaluation if we have to get evaluation right. So we are trying to establish those institutions around. Next step was we decided to test the field by looking at projects funded by government or funded by donors. So our first evaluation actually was an education project funded by the Saudis. We went to the field, we assessed the situation, we did our report and decided to engage the European Union because the EU was funding us in establishing the policy environment for the National Monitoring and Evaluation Agency. One thing we found from that evaluation was that community engagement was very weak. You can go to a school where a school is probably even at maybe wall height or even roofing. The head of that institution, the community in which the institution is being built, are not involved. The contractors don't respect those for which the structure is being built. How can you build my house and I'm not involved in any decision making on that house? So what we did was we advised the EU, and that became a decision making point for the European Union that any project that they are implementing now, for any funding to be given to that project, communities must countersign that. So what am I saying? Evidence was used in a decision making by a key funder in this country. I'll talk of another one, which was funded by IFAD. That's an agricultural project. IFAD initially undertook an assessment of their projects in the country. After their report, we decided to undertake ours independently without looking at their report. After that assessment, we gave the report back to IFAD. That resulted in restructuring the IFAD projects in Sierra Leone, both in terms of staffing and scaling down, because the evaluation proved out that, yes, it can be effective, but it's not efficient all around the country. So they have to scale down. That is evidence used in decision making. When we took over again as agency, we discovered that the National Development Plan, successor development plans, never go through an evaluation. They never do a midterm evaluation. But every 5 years, a new plan is being formed. So we saw that as a fault, that there's a gap here in evaluation. We contributed to the 2018 and 2023 evaluation because we are just starting. But after realizing that gap, we decided that, the National Development Plan itself is the plan that drives interventions, that drives development in the country as a whole. So that should be our starting point. This year's plan, which is 2024 to 2030, it's normally 5 years. It should be 2024 to 2028. But because the Sustainable Development Goals is coming to an end in 2030, we decided to push it to 2030. And taking all the ministries, departments, and agencies, those involved in any little way of the responsibility of evaluation and monitoring, we are invited to draft that monitoring and evaluation results framework so that that result framework can fit into sector frameworks, speaking to the National Development Plan, and that type of a decision can drive development globally in the country. So this year, last year, we decided to get the result framework out and now helping the MDAs to adapt their strategies to that National Development Plan by producing at a ministry level or sectoral level research framework. So that again, it's like at the end of this, within the National Development Plan this year, we are going to undertake a midterm and we are going to undertake an end term evaluation so that that fits into the successor National Development Plan that will come after the SDGs. Also, the data we are getting from now to 2030 can fit into the decision-making process of the VNR of our country, Sierra Leone. So that is actually what we are using for evidence based evaluation in this country. The last one is youth. The current midterm National Development Plan has 5 pillars, and youth empowerment scheme is the 3rd pillar. It is very key and has set targets. Fortunately, NAMED was part of writing that the 5 pillars based on the manifesto of the current government. we decided to undertake youth programs just to assess how they are doing and how we can inform the result framework of the National Development Plan. So we did something like youth in fisheries, a youth in car wash, youth in agriculture. Of course, the answers there were weakness in terms of capacity, weakness in terms of monitoring itself, and the greatest issue was weakness in terms of data availability. And that is why now in the National Development Plan, we are key in getting the data. And to be able to do that, we approach donors, UNDP in particular, to help us with establishing an electronic system that can track data, that can track the indicators with or without human interference. And that system will have to trigger whether we should go to the field to collect data. Data is key here, but very, very adequate in the country. As somebody was saying, if you look at the Sierra Leone evaluation that they undertook, data must have been a big challenge for them. So now with this system, we believe we can have data and archive them for future interventions. Another big support we are getting is from UNICEF. Not saying this because UNICEF is here. UNICEF has helped us to really put evaluation to the front burner. It was UNICEF that helped us to establish the Sierra Leone Evaluation Association. There was never one before. It's UNICEF in establishing that evaluation association. We were opportune to get the governance structure, a member from the governance structure of the African Development Bank to come and launch that program in Sierra Leone. And from that time, we have really moved on. Now we've developed the guidelines. We have developed the capacity building plan, and there's a plan to move that out beginning either mid this month or end of this month. So that is how evaluation has progressed in this country. If we talk of constraints, yes, there are many. If we talk of challenges, yes, they do exist. But we have a mantra at the National Monitoring and Evaluation Agencies that, yes, challenges do exist. Constraints do exist, but we don't focus on those. We focus on the result. So how do we do this? We partner, of course, with our donor agencies. We partner with the private sector. However, the private sector in the country is very, very weak. Very, very weak. In fact, they depend more on government than themselves. But we are finding ways to do that. We are working with the local councils we have established, M&Es, and capacitated them through the World Bank project. And we are working with them to have some capacity, technical capacity, to build on evaluations in their institutions. We are also working with CSOs. We've had meetings with them. And the idea is CSOs are with the people on the ground. They can observe. They don't need to be technical, but they can inform us about something happening. I'll tell you one example. A new bridge was funded by the EU. The president launched that one. And after 1 month, a passerby called that this bridge is cracking. So if you work with CSOs, you can do M&E in a better way. You don't need to be there. Anyway, the bottom line was we had to intervene, and the government intervened, and that one was solved. So those are some of the challenges, but those are some of the solutions we apply. Partnering with donors, partnering with CSOs, and partnering with the private sector. The key challenge we have is funding. We tried that with AfDB, and we are promising after this evaluation, we are going to continue trying with AfDB to help us establish evaluation as a culture here in Sierra Leone. I mentioned UNICEF supporting us, so we are asking AfDB to come into this and try to support us as much as we can. a challenge that is beyond our control most of the time, for example, is the external shocks like COVID. However, Sierra Leone exercised or showed resilience during that period. Record shows that it was one of the countries that really showed resilience at the start of COVID, to the extent that COVID could not see its way too much into Sierra Leone's economy. Even though it was funded, yes, it hit the economy, but we were able to survive from that. These are some of the things I think I'll talk about: challenges, use of evidence in strategic decision-making, and in our national planning.
Thank you very much, James. You talked about partnerships, building partnerships. You talked about private sector, and you also brought in a very important dimension, the role of civil society organizations. Now, at this juncture, let me invite another panelist, Alice Nene James. Alice Nene James is a national coordinator of Sierra Leone Association of Non-Government Organizations, in short SLANGO. She has over 25 years experience in strategic leadership and program management across various sectors. So, Alice, welcome to the panel, and would like to hear from you. How are civil society organizations in Sierra Leone using evaluative evidence to transform their programming and drive meaningful change in communities?
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing me on board. And I want to say thanks to previous speakers who have, threw light on most of the things that I want to talk about. But notwithstanding, I'll highlight some points. I know that civil society organizations in Sierra Leone have leveraged evaluation evidence to enhance their programming. And that is no secret, we all know that. And one of the things that have helped us is that the decisions that we make as civil society organizations are mostly data-driven. We collect data, we analyze it from our programs, and we try to understand what works and what doesn't. And most of the time, we try to incorporate baseline assessments, midterm evaluations, and final impact of evaluations. And we use this to assess the effectiveness of our initiative and then try to make informed adjustments. Another one is our community engagement and accountability. And if you are in Sierra Leone, you will know that most of the time we have accountability sessions. Our membership do have accountability sessions. And these sessions are mostly to, evaluate evidence and also try to amplify the voice of community members in planning and implementing programs. And many organizations have tried, in most cases, to conduct participatory evaluations where communities are involved in assessing their needs and the impact of interventions. And this also fosters accountability and ownership, because that's what we talk about all the time, because we don't want to be implementing in the community and the communities do not know what is going on. I know Dr. James just highlighted that. All right, the other one has to do with adaptive programming. When we utilize evidences from evaluations, just like what Dr. Soraya have spoken about, it's, utilizing the evidence from evaluation allows us to adopt adaptive management practices, because we cannot talk without data. We cannot talk without experiences. We cannot talk without having something that we can pinpoint on. So most times our programs have been modified based on the findings, ensuring that they remain relevant and effective in addressing and articulating the needs of the community, because they are our constituents and we are particular about them. Somebody talks about capacity building. I think it was during the presentation, the earlier presentation. And most times when we do this, we try to use the evidence from evaluation to identify the gaps in our capacities. And this enables us to seek trainings, to seek resources that can, help build our capacities and implement programs effectively. And also at the end of the day, we try to measure the impact of the programs that we implement. It also helps us to do policy advocacy. When we gather information, as a result of evaluation, we present compelling evaluative evidences. And that's why as civil society organization, our conversations are mostly based on the fact, are mostly based on evidence. And we cannot advocate more effectively for policy change at local levels or at national levels without us having evidence. And the evidence can highlight, successful interventions that have worked for communities, interventions that have not worked. And we use that to scale up or maybe replicate some of the initiative that we have, gotten from the evaluations. And it helps us to also do resource mobilization. Sometimes the funders are increasingly looking for evidence of the impact before committing their resources. And as civil society organization, we also try to equip ourselves with robust evaluative evidences that can also demonstrate that the effectiveness of our programs, and also try to attract funding that support with support from our international donors or our local stakeholders. We share our knowledge that we've gotten from the fields and from this evaluation. We share it, we share learnings, we also document our learnings, and we engage with networks, with platforms such as these, because I know so many people are listening to what we are saying now, so that we are able to share what we have learned from the evaluations. We just don't keep it to ourselves, and we also try to collaborate so that this information can be disseminated, and successful methodologies can contribute to broader understanding and community development. We also focus on, vulnerable groups. Effective evidences helps us to also highlight the unique needs and challenges faced by marginalized populations within our context. And most times as CSOs, we try to tailor our programs to better address the issues by promoting social inclusion and equity, and even targeting people who think they have been excluded, bring on board issues around inclusivity, working with disabled people, and all of that. And we also try to monitor the feedback loops. Sometimes people do not like feedback. Some people do encourage feedbacks, but as monitoring, it's one of the critical components. You cannot be doing monitoring and evaluations and you don't expect feedback. So we use this to establish a feedback mechanism. So if you go to some of the communities, you will see boxes where people are asked to, put in their feedback, or you'll see a questionnaire that people will ask you to, that organizations can ask you to fill, where you get appropriate feedback from communities or from stakeholders or from donors or from people who are interested in our interventions. And we also measure our impact. Now, as we launch our report, most of our members do have a book of impact, where they have impact stories, where they have successful stories. This is because our evaluations and our monitoring have guided us in doing some of this, and we are employing innovative methodologies such as what the previous speakers have talked about, like qualitative studies to measure the impact of our interventions. And some of these are really, really rigorous approaches that also enhances credibility and provide persuasive evidence of success or areas for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice. Now, I would like to give Well, our panelists, just 1 minute each to give us one or two issues that you believe are important in ensuring that if evaluative evidence really informs our strategic choices in shaping inclusive development. Now I start with Honorable Tapla. Please, you have your 1 minute. Honorable Tapla, you are muted.
Okay, thank you, Vesper. Okay, so going back to Soraya's comments, Dr. James' comment and the last speaker comments, you can see all of us have this idea that evaluation is essential because Dr. James mentioned that it gives an understanding, an in-depth understanding of how you can move forward with what is happening and what the people want. For example, most of our projects, when you look at it, the barriers that were mentioned in the report, there are things that could have been identified from baseline studies, and that is part of evaluation. And then the midterm evaluation processes that we should have done that was not captured sometimes. And when you don't do midterm evaluation, you don't see the gap in between what's going to happen and at the end of the project. So at the end, you will find out that some of the outcomes that you should have achieved were unachievable because you did not properly evaluate. And we have been doing a lot of monitoring, and that is why we need to focus more on evaluation from this lesson learned with the AfDB and the UNICEF report. We have to transition and focus more on institutional capacity, building the local capacity for evaluation as well as national capacity for evaluation. And I think from the Sierra Leone story that they have institutionalized monitoring evaluation, that was something that we need to do here in Liberia also, that we can take it from the Ministry of Finance and make it a separate institution that can monitor all of our projects, giving and real-time information on the evaluation status of our projects. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Honorable Tapla. Institutional capacity for evaluation. I'll now give the floor to our next panelist, Soraya. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Prosper. Thank you so much. So from my side, maybe one key lesson that is coming from our UNICEF evaluation, country program evaluation in partnership, of course, with different government partners, is that the critical importance of investing in local capacity and ownership to ensure sustainability and resilience. We are talking about adaptive programming, so it's about systematically ensuring from the design and throughout the implementation. And of course, external support can catalyze progress, but the long-term impact depends on community empowerment, local capacity development, and strengthening the national systems, and embedding the voices, local voices, and it's about equity at the end of the day, but it's also about effectiveness of the whole program that we were talking about, be it in the economic area, but also in the social and human development area. So embedding the local voices, including women and children, adolescents, young people, majority of our continent population, is very important. And so the point will be also to ensure the right balance between community engagement, community and partnership, but also the local governance, which is very important at the end of the day. So I will say that, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Soraya. You added voice to what Honorable Tapla said, also bringing in the issue of not only the local capacity, but local voices as well. That's key. So I'd like to bring in James. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Prosper, for coming to what you've asked for. And let me just tell Honorable Tapler something. I think the Cabinet Secretary, who I think is called a minister or something, a team of that came to Sierra Leone, and they were impressed, just as you have also stated, that they would like to have an agency like ours probably implemented over there with the Ministry of Finance. So I'm just on information, maybe they can go back and check with the Cabinet Secretary.
It was mentioned in Cabinet meeting. Thank you.
Good. Oh, that's a progress. So we are still hoping that we do the coordination and the partnership and maybe the exchange later on. Coming to your 1 minute issue, Prosper, is why the nationals, Liberia, ourselves, and every other country is trying to strengthen evaluation locally in the countries. I would like the international partners, including institutions like the AfDB, IDEV, for example, if it's undertaking an evaluation in the country, let them search to see if an agency like ours is in that country to partner with local agencies to do the evaluation. If you look at past issues, donor-driven evaluation is like hiring a consultant either locally or outside, most times outside, coming into a country and doing evaluation, asking a whole lot of people that may not be even linked to the evaluation, that may be linked with the project remotely or otherwise. So my advice is for institutions like ours, which I'm sure with time is going to be in a whole lot of West African countries, try as much as possible to partner with those institutions to do evaluation. There are two advantages. One, the local institution has the key to open doors for any consultant that is coming. And number two, it strengthens the capacity of the local institution, give it some muscle for CSOs, for NGOs, and other people to know that, yes, there's an institution here recognized by international partners to undertake evaluation. So that is actually my take. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edwin. That's really important. I would like now to bring in Alice. Please, floor is yours, Alice.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. James, for highlighting those key issues, and thanks to the others who have just spoken. We are more or less on the same page. But for me, one effective way that civil society can better leverage evaluative evidence to advance sustainable development is by fostering a multi-stakeholder partnership that actually integrates evaluation findings into decision-making processes. By collaborating with government, private sectors and local communities, and even civil society, this can create a more comprehensive understanding of the impact of various initiatives. And I think Dr. James has spoken about that, and I think even Honorable Jocelyn, said something like that. These partnerships also try to, foster the sharing and dissemination of evaluative evidences, enabling stakeholders to, learn from past experiences. What are the successes? What are the failures? And for example, for us, we can organize workshops or forums, to present evaluation reports, to highlight on best practices and engage different actors in the discussions about data-driven strategies for sustainable development. I think this has helped in countries that are developed, countries that are not as fragile as us, but some of these practices are best practices that some countries have utilized. And I think if we continue to do this and we continue to build capacities of our programs to enhance the skills of our local organizations, because most of the time when you partner with CSOs, they are frontline people. They know what's going on and they know what's happening. If they are able to gather the data, they're able to analyze it, and sometimes we utilize it. So if you want me to say something, I think this is what I will have to say. Just equip our organizations, give them the tools they can generate and interpret and evaluate the evidences. We create a stronger ecosystem in sustainable development, and that cannot be understated here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice. That's really important, leveraging the local knowledge. At times we forget that the most important point or starting point is that local knowledge, building on it, and then we strengthen the existing, as you said, ecosystem to inform our strategic decisions and approaches to sustainable development. So now would like to open this to a plenary session, and I'm bringing in my colleague to facilitate this session for questions and answers. I think not bad.
Very much. So I'll be reading the questions out loud. How do you wish me to proceed? Should I read all the questions, or do you want me to read them one by one?
I think you can read because we are pressed for time. I'd like maybe you read all the questions because some of them could be related, and then we will package them according to the themes and then invite our panelists to respond to them.
Perfect. Sounds good to me. So we have the first question from Bachuma Tom. Savara already responded in a written form, but in case some panelists want to complete, I'm still reading it. So the question is, how do we slow down and ensure systematic use of evidence in fast-paced environments where there are constant dynamic challenges which we need to respond to rapidly? The second question is from Danlami Gamwak, who's asking what is horizontal inequality. Now we have Sekou Diaby, so his questions were in French. I'm going to translate them directly into English. He has two questions. The first one being, what is the bank doing to ensure that the states themselves take ownership of the evaluation? He wants to highlight the fact that it's important that the culture of evaluation takes root in countries and that countries carry out evaluations themselves. And he says that this requires capacity building in terms of expertise and resources, as evaluations are costly. The second question goes to Dr. James directly, so that will make it more simple. So Sekou Diaby was asking Dr. James, who funds the evaluations carried out by your departments, and how do you go about selecting the program project policy to be evaluated? We have a question from Samson, our dear colleague, who's saying that capacity gap is one of the biggest challenge in fragility context. And he's asking to what extent the AfDB and UNICEF address this issue through their respective programs. Now we have Mohamed Jallo, who's asking, what are your recommendations for persons living with disability in Sierra Leone in connection to the recommendations of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons Living with Disabilities when you talk on inclusive participation in all areas of life? And at last, I think we'll be stopping there because that's quite a lot for the moment. We have Lilian Olik, who's asking what lessons from Sierra Leone and Liberia are transferable to other fragile or low capacity contexts in Africa. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have heard the questions. I would like first to direct the questions that were very specific to the panelists. Dr. James, if you'd like, please to respond to the question that was directly directed to you.
to the questionnaires. Our evaluations are, in most cases, funded by the government of Sierra Leone itself. We look at the portfolio of projects that are approved by Parliament. In terms of selection, we look at the age of the project. For example, if it is like a 5-year project, how far, what's the progress within that 5 year? That triggers, based on the literature that we review, that triggers which projects that we'll look at for evaluation. That is about the selection and the funding. Sometimes projects that we are evaluating, for example, the free quality education, which is a program, we partner with the implementers if they have a budget allocated to that, and sometimes we just share that project. As I told you right now, why I'm appearing this way, we are looking at a health program that is building hospitals around the country in some districts. And to do this is a partnership between the Ministry of Health, the Parliamentary Committee on Health, and NAMIA itself. So sometimes they are demand-driven and sometimes they are supply-driven. So this one, in a sense, is more demand-driven. The supply-driven is what we do in most cases by being either proactive or reactive in undertaking our evaluations. That's much about funding and selection. Maybe, if you don't mind, Prosper. Hello?
Yes, we
Hello?
get you. We get
Yeah,
you.
I may want to add a little bit on this disability issue. When we started, we actually engaged, there is an agency or department for disability. However, beyond us, the Ministry of Education has aggressively produced a policy that includes disability. And that's what we call the radical inclusion. The minister that was there is now the prime minister. So this aggressively says every person, child, disabled, women, should be given the right to educate themselves, should be given the right to have access to education, including pregnant girls that probably had fallen out of school. They are encouraged to get back into school for a free education. So that is what we look at in terms of disability by including them at whatever level. In fact, under the health sector, there are conditions in the Act that disability or people with disability or people that are disadvantaged a little bit can access health facilities free of charge. So this is not much that the country is doing to involve disabled people into economic exercises in this country, in Sierra Leone. Over to you, Prosper.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edwin. I would like to combine two questions and ask not only the panelists, but also bring in our two discussants and also Sarah, two discussants from the bank, May, Babakar, and Sevara, to just briefly respond or give highlights on this. Is the issue of capacity. The question is from Sekou Diaby, and also it's been asked by Samson Hotets Hosso, also about the capacity. What the bank is doing to ensure ownership and also strengthen the capacity to help build the evaluation culture in both Sierra Leone and Liberia, and also the question about the transferability of the lessons from Sierra Leone and Liberia to other countries that have low capacity or of a similar context, meaning low capacity challenges and fragility. So I will give maybe a minute or two to our two speakers from the bank, each, May and Babukar and Sebara. You have 1 to 2 minutes to respond to that question. I put it in one question. There are 3 questions, but they talk to capacity, ownership, and also transferability of the findings or the evaluation results to other contexts. Over to you. I'll start with May.
Thank you. Thank you, Prosper, and thank you to our panelists for that rich exchange and discussion. So in terms of capacity building and ownership of evaluations, this is also a very important element for us in terms of ensuring that these evaluations are ultimately used and shape policy, both within the bank, but also the countries. So with each evaluation, we do work quite closely with our country offices, but also with the Ministry of Finance to review the evaluation focus and shape the questions that are being investigated to ensure that these are questions that will provide meaningful information for the decision making at that level. So in that way, we are building ownership. But also, the culture by trying to generate the demand for evidence. But otherwise, also through the implementation, we will work with teams of both international, but also as well as local consultants who have been very instrumental. In Sierra Leone, we had a pretty strong team that was very much plugged in terms of the networks, but also the capacity in understanding and conducting certain elements of the evaluation. So that comes through. But I will also invite, I think we have colleagues online who can talk more broadly about IDEV's efforts around building evaluation capacity development, working with local networks, as Edwin said, in terms of how we initially provided support for the start of NAMEA, and those programs continue to go on. In terms of transferability of lessons from Liberia and Sierra Leone, these lessons, I think we had it right through from Savannah's presentation, our presentations, that we are really finding similar issues, whether it's around the importance of adaptability and flexibility, very critical for working in fragile and transition environments, to be able to have that agility to change direction, to change approach when things change, and really having real-time mechanisms that provide real-time evidence so that you're able to adapt on the fly as things evolve, as well as with fragility is also the issue of private sector development. We are now operating in a context of, reduced development assistance financing, but also economic stress around the countries. And we can't focus on public resources anymore, and have to really have interventions that stimulate the private sector to come in and catalyze their engagement to be able to really address development challenges. But the lesson here is the importance of adapting and understanding the capacity of the private sector in the fragile environments, because this is weak. It's weak, it's informal, it's scattered. So really having responsive interventions that target those unique weaknesses for the private sector in the fragile environments. We can't move ahead in the fragile environments without catalyzing and strengthening the private sector engagement. And then lastly, I'll really talk about the robust designs, but also implementation arrangements for projects, for programs, for service delivery that can't be underemphasized. The issue of paying attention to national capacity and supporting and strengthening them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, May. I would like to invite Sevara. Please, Sevara, floor is yours.
Thank you. I don't know if you can see me. Okay, thank you. So regarding the first question, at UNICEF, we are taking several steps to ensure local ownership and strengthen capacity for building a robust evaluation culture in Sierra Leone and Liberia. First, we are working closely with our government partners, national institutions on national capacity development through providing technical support in assessing capacity needs and providing tailored support. Secondly, through our evaluations, we are also fostering close collaborations with our local partners and communities to integrate their perspectives into evaluation design and implementation, but also promoting shared ownership of both the process and the results. Thirdly, we are embedding evaluations into program cycles and decision-making processes, ensuring that evidence is not just generated, but actively used to inform policies and improve service delivery. And finally, we are also increasing our activities in terms of knowledge sharing platforms and peer learning, both within countries and across the region, to build momentum and create a culture where evaluation is seen as a vital tool for accountability, learning it and improvement. And regarding the question on transferable lessons across the region, I've provided my response, but just to briefly summarize our experience in that aspect, what we've learned, our key lesson from Sierra Leone and Liberia is the value of adaptive, community-driven approaches that can foster resilience and local ownership. Another transferable insight is integrated cross-sectoral programming that can maximize impact in fragile contexts, while strong data systems and evidence use can enable responsive decision-making. And lastly, capacity building. Capacity building, equity, and gender-focused development programming are essential for creating sustainable systems and ensuring that interventions adapt to evolving needs. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sevara. I think we are coming close to the end of our session. We have had a very enriching engagement. And we would like to thank our panelists for quite insightful and rich discussions that we had, and also the discussants from AfDB and UNICEF. We really learned a lot from the two evaluations, actually 4 evaluations, because there are two from 2 countries each, so it's 4. And I would like now to, before we formally close, to invite my colleagues to take us through a few housekeeping issues.
Thank you very much, Prosper. Now, I'd just like to tell you all that a survey will be popping on your screens, and we'd greatly appreciate it if you could fill it in. Thank you very much.
Teresa? Ask Teresa. Not one close.
Okay, the survey has popped up. I hope everyone has seen the survey. It's very brief. It doesn't take, I don't think if it takes 2 minutes. Okay, so after the survey, we'll be formally closing. We thank everyone for participating in this session. It has been a very engaging, a very exciting session, and we are really grateful for your time. We have enjoyed the company of experts, policy makers, decision makers, and practitioners in the field of evaluation. And we have learned a lot in terms of use of evaluative evidence in shaping our strategic decisions to achieve sustainable development. We are really grateful for your time, and we thank you, and we wish you a very good day. Thank you.
We'll just wait a few minutes for everyone to be able to fill in the survey. Thank you.